My name is Ava Calder, and I am 32. 22 years ago, my own parents left me outside a guardianship courtroom when I was 10 years old. Earlier this year, they walked into my settlement hearing with a lawyer, my birth certificate, and the calm smiles of people who had already spent the money. The check was for $780,000. It was filed in my name, but they were certain the court would hand it to the parents on record. Then my old court-appointed guardian stood up and slid a sealed report across the table. On page 7, the report named the parents who had abandoned me after that hearing, and my mother's smile went flat before the judge even finished reading the line about who could receive the settlement. If your family ever turned your pain into their paperwork, stay with me, and please like and subscribe if you believe a child should never have to beg to be counted as family. To understand why my parents stopped breathing when that report opened, I need to take you back to the morning before they left me there, when I still believed a mother's hand meant you were safe. The morning began at our kitchen table. I was 10 years old, sitting on a chair too tall for me, with my sneakers swinging above the cracked linoleum. My mother, Denise, snapped the lid on an orange pill bottle and dropped it into her purse. My father, Martin, stood at the counter with a stack of court papers folded under one hand. He did not read them out loud. He never did. Our apartment sat over a closed laundromat on the east side of town. My father worked the late shift at a shipping warehouse. My mother cleaned offices after people in suits had gone home and left their trash beside their desks. There was always a reason we had no money. Usually, that reason was me. If the electric bill was late, my mother looked at me. If the car needed brakes, my father looked at me. If a letter came from the county with my name on it, both of them went quiet in a way that made me feel guilty before I knew what the paper said. That morning, I heard my mother say, "There is money somewhere, but no child can touch it yet." I did not know what she meant. I only knew the word money made her softer for half a second, then she looked at me and became hard again. In the Calder home, grown-up problems were not solved. They were handed to the smallest person in the room. My mother called me difficult in front of cashiers. My father called me expensive in front of landlords. They did not need to shout. They used forms, sighs, and the flat voice adults use when they believe the room will agree with them. On the way to court, my parents stopped for coffee. My mother bought herself a large one. My father bought a breakfast sandwich wrapped in foil. When I asked for milk, he said court fees were expensive. He said it like I had hired the judge myself. At a red light, Martin signed one page against the steering wheel. I leaned forward and asked what it was. He turned the page over before I could see the heading. "Adult business," he said. Then he placed it in the glove compartment, as if even my eyes could damage it. Before we went inside, Denise pulled a comb through my hair so hard my eyes watered. She did not say I looked nice. She said, "Try to look manageable." Manageable. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper. People moved in and out of rooms with folders pressed to their chests. My parents walked fast. I kept one hand on my mother's sleeve until she shook it off at the security line. Near the wooden bench, I first met Elaine Ross. She was not family. She did not pretend to be. She wore a plain navy coat and carried a clipboard with my name on it. But she bent down before she spoke to me, and that made her different from every adult in the building. "Did you eat breakfast, Ava?" she asked. I looked at my mother first. Elaine noticed. She did not push me. She brought me a paper cup of water from the cooler, and waited until I held it with both hands. The cup was thin. I remember the rim going soft where my thumb pressed it. It was the first safe thing anyone handed me that day. A wooden bench sat outside the courtroom. It had a shiny middle from years of people sliding across it in good clothes and bad news. Elaine sat beside me for a minute. She did not fill the air with promises. She only said, "I am here to make sure someone writes down what happens." I did not understand why that mattered. I would. Inside the courtroom, my parents sat together. I sat a little behind them, close enough to see the tag still hanging from my father's coat sleeve. No one had taken it off. Maybe he planned to return it. The judge asked questions I did not understand. My parents answered in careful voices. Denise folded a tissue in her lap but never used it. Martin kept saying they had tried. He said they had done everything a reasonable parent could do. Then my mother turned her head just enough for me to see her profile. "We cannot raise a child who turns every room into trouble." She did not cry when she said it. The judge looked down at the file. My father looked at the wall. Elaine wrote in a small notebook with a black pen. No one in that room asked what kind of trouble a 10-year-old could make by needing breakfast, a ride, and a safe place to sleep. After the hearing, my mother told me to sit on the bench. "Stay here," she said. "We have to talk to the adults." My father held the glass door open for her. He did not look back. Denise's purse tapped against her hip as she walked away. I watched them pass the metal detector, the security desk, and the double doors that led outside. I waited. Children are trained to wait for parents, even bad ones. The paper cup folded in my hand. The water was gone, but I kept holding it because Elaine had given it to me. People came out of other rooms. A man laughed too loudly at the elevator. A woman in red shoes told someone on the phone that she was done with this place. My parents did not come back. At first, I thought they were in another hallway. Then I thought they were in the bathroom. Then I thought I had done something wrong by staying exactly where my mother told me to stay. Elaine found me after the hallway had thinned out. She looked at the bench, then at the doors, then at the cup crushed in my hand. Her face changed. Not dramatically. She did not gasp. She did not make a show of being kind. She asked one question. "Did they leave the building?" I nodded. She crouched in front of me again. "Stay with me, Ava." Those 3 words did not fix anything. They did not make her my mother. They did not turn the day into a rescue scene. But they kept the floor under me for 1 more minute, and sometimes 1 minute is all a child has. Elaine took me to a small office near the clerk's window. She gave me another cup of water. Then she stepped into the doorway and spoke to a court officer in a voice I had not heard from her before. "This child needs a record that does not depend on the people who left her." That sentence was not for me. I heard it anyway. A court employee came with a small camera. Elaine asked me to sit still. She did not touch my face. She did not ask me to smile. The camera clicked once. Later, I learned the photo showed me on that wooden bench with my coat in my lap and the crushed cup beside my shoe. At the time, I thought they were taking the picture because I had done something wrong. Elaine wrote the report that afternoon. She wrote what my parents said. She wrote what they did. She wrote that I was left unattended outside the guardianship courtroom after both biological parents exited the building. She wrote it like a woman building a wall around the truth. I did not go home with Elaine. Life is not usually that neat. I went into the system, and the system had many doors. I learned to pack fast. I learned to keep my birth certificate in a plastic sleeve. I learned that adults like the word placement because it sounds cleaner than saying a child has been moved again. Years passed in jumps. At 12, I stopped asking how long I could stay. At 15, I learned to read the faces of women at agency desks before they said my name. At 17, I stopped flinching when someone called me resilient, because people often use that word when they do not want to say abandoned. The Calder name stayed on my paperwork. My parents were gone from my birthdays, my school forms, and every emergency contact line that mattered. But their names still followed me in ink. Martin Calder, Denise Calder, biological parents, last known address, last known phone number. They were absent in life and present on paper. I did not know Elaine's report followed me too. I did not know page 7 existed. I did not know about the photo of the bench. I did not know one adult had written down the truth before my parents could turn it into a story about a difficult child and 2 exhausted people who had no choice. For a long time, I thought the bench was only the place where I had been left. I grew up. I worked. I paid rent. I kept my voice calm in offices where people expected foster kids to arrive with storms in their pockets. I built a life that did not require anyone named Calder to unlock the door. Then, 22 years after my mother told me to stay on that bench, a letter came from the court. The settlement trust connected to my childhood injury was ready to be reviewed. The words were plain. The envelope was thin. Nothing about it looked like a door opening. But my hands knew better. I sat at my kitchen table with the letter in front of me and read my own name 3 times. Ava Calder. Not case number. Not dependent minor. Not trouble. Then I saw a line near the bottom. A prior guardian of record has been notified. Elaine Ross. I had not said that name out loud in years. I put the letter down. I stood up. I sat back down. Then I looked at the empty chair across from me and wondered who else had been waiting for that old record to matter. Because my parents had been gone for 22 years. So how did they know the exact moment to come back? 22 years later, I had my own table. It was a square thrift store table with one corner that dipped if I leaned on it wrong. The rent was paid, the lights were on. No one could stand over me and say my breakfast had made the month harder. I worked in the records office of a community clinic. That sounds dull. And most days it was. I scanned forms. I corrected birthdays. I called patients when a signature was missing. I knew how often one wrong line on a piece of paper could make a person disappear inside a system. That job did not make me powerful. It made me careful. The letter from the court arrived on a Tuesday, folded inside a thin white envelope. It had my full name on it. Ava Marie Calder. Not a case number. Not dependent minor. Not any of the softer words adults use when they mean unwanted. I opened it at the kitchen table. The first line said the settlement trust connected to my childhood injury was ready for review. The second line named the amount, $780,000. I read that number once. Then I turned the page over and checked the back, as if the paper might explain how a sum that large could sit quietly in my life for so long. It did not. The money came from a case filed after I was hurt at a county-run child care center when I was very young. I remembered the injury in pieces. A white ceiling. My mother's hand on my shoulder. A doctor asking me to follow his finger with my eyes. I did not remember the settlement. Children are not told the price adults put on their pain. The court had held the money until I was old enough, stable enough, and legally clear enough to receive it myself. That was the plain version. The human version was simpler. Something bad happened to me. Other people argued over it. The money waited. 3 days after the letter arrived, my phone rang from a blocked number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered, because some old habits look like caution. Ava, my mother said. She did not say hello. She did not ask if she had the right number. She said my name like she had used it yesterday. Denise, I said. There was a pause. She did not like that. We heard there is paperwork, she said. Not I missed you. Not I am sorry. Paperwork. That was the bridge she chose after 22 years. Martin came on the line before I could answer. His voice had gone thinner with age, but the shape of it was the same. It still had that warehouse floor certainty, like everything could be stacked, labeled, and moved if a man signed the right slip. We are still her parents on paper, he said. He did not say your parents. He said her parents, as if he were already speaking to a room where I had become a subject. I placed the phone on speaker. I opened a notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote the date and time. My hand did not shake. That surprised me. Denise asked if I had received notice from the court. Martin said they had the right to be present. He said a child settlement involved the whole family. Denise said they had carried a burden that no one understood. I looked around my kitchen while she said that. One mug in the sink. One pair of shoes by the door. One set of keys in the small blue bowl I bought for myself. No burden of theirs was in that room. I asked how they got my number. Denise said, "Do not start like that." There she was. Not 10 seconds in. And I was trouble again. I did not argue. I said all future contact about the settlement should be in writing. Then I ended the call and saved the recording. After that, I moved carefully. I called the court clerk. I asked for copies of every notice connected to the review. I used my work voice. Clear, polite, boring on purpose. Boring is useful when people are waiting for you to sound unstable. The clerk told me a petition had been filed by 2 biological parents of record. I asked her to send the packet. She hesitated. Paper moved on her end. "You may want to read it sitting down," she said. That was the first crack in someone else's voice. The packet arrived by email that afternoon. I printed it at the clinic after hours, 1 page at a time, while the front desk lights clicked off behind me. The printer coughed out their names first. Denise Calder. Martin Calder. Then came mine. They were requesting to be named family payees. The phrase sounded harmless until I read what it meant in plain life. They wanted permission to receive the money for me, manage it for me, and decide what portion should be used to reimburse them. Reimburse. I sat down in the copy room. My parents had not bought my school shoes. They had not signed my permission slips. They had not sat beside a hospital bed, packed a lunch, paid for braces, or waded through a fever. But they had written that they suffered emotional and financial strain due to my childhood injury and my difficult placement history. My difficult placement history. They had left me on a courthouse bench and then filed a request to be paid for the echo. That was not foolish. That was strategy. They did not claim love. Love would have been hard to prove. They claimed paperwork. They claimed stress. They claimed a long shadow of parenthood, without the cost of showing up inside it. I scanned the packet into my own drive. I saved it in 3 places. I printed a clean copy and put it in a folder. On the front, I wrote one word: settlement. Then I made myself read every page. At the end of the packet was a copy of my birth certificate. My mother had circled their names in blue ink. Beside the circle, someone had written, biological relationship, undisputed. I stared at that line for a long time. Undisputed. They were not lying about blood. They were not strangers trying to fake their way into my life. The paper really did name them. That was why the move was cold. It had just enough truth in it to stand upright. A week later, another envelope arrived from the court. This one was shorter. It listed who had been notified of the hearing. My name. Their names. Their attorney. And one line near the bottom: prior guardian of record, Elaine Ross. I read the name twice before I sat down. I had not seen Elaine since I was a child. In my memory, she belonged to a paper cup of water and a navy coat. I had turned her into a small safe corner in a day that had no safe rooms. I never knew if she remembered me. Now the court had found her. Or she had never really left the file. I called the clerk again. I asked if Elaine Ross would be attending. The clerk could not tell me much. She said notice had been accepted. She said any sealed records would be handled by the judge. Sealed records. The phrase landed quietly. That night, Denise left a voicemail. Her voice was sweeter this time. That made it worse. Ava, honey, we do not want this to become ugly, she said. Your father and I are still your parents on paper. Let us handle the hearing like a family. Like a family. I saved the voicemail. Martin sent a text the next morning. It said, "We know you had a hard time. But you were a child. You do not understand what we went through." I did not answer. I made a timeline instead. 10 years old. Guardianship hearing. Left outside courtroom. Foster placement. County settlement. Trust held. Review notice. Parent petition. Reimbursement request. Elaine Ross notified. Each line was short. Each line kept me from drowning in the old version of myself. At lunch, I went to the diner near the clinic. I had been eating there for years. The server, Ruthie, knew I liked coffee before food and booth seats facing the door. She saw the folder under my arm and brought the coffee without asking. "You look like you're reading bad news standing up," she said. "I sat down first this time," I said. She nodded as if that mattered. Then she slid a napkin under the mug and left me alone. If you have ever watched someone use a piece of paper to make your lived truth look smaller, comment the word paper. I want to know how many of us have had to prove what should have been obvious. Then I opened the folder again and found the line that made the room tilt. Estimated parental expenses claimed $46,000. There it was, the thing they actually held in their hands. They were not only trying to stand between me and my settlement, they were trying to walk out with money for years they had not lived, meals they had not cooked, rides they had not given, and a child they had not raised. That claim changed the shape of the hearing. It meant they had something to lose. I underlined the number once. I did not press hard. I did not tear the page. I folded the petition back into the folder and put it in my bag. When the hearing date came closer, Denise called again. I let it go to voicemail. "Ava," she said. And this time her voice had an edge. "Do not embarrass us in court. We are trying to keep this simple." Simple. That was their word for a world where I stayed small, quiet, and useful. I looked at the courthouse notice on my refrigerator. The hearing was set for 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. Same building. Same county. Different woman. I did not know what Elaine would say. I did not know what was in the sealed record. I knew only what I would not do. I would not scream. I would not beg. I would not let my parents turn my silence into agreement. On Sunday night, I placed 3 things in my bag: the court notice, the printed petition, and the notebook with every call and message logged in order. Then I set my keys beside the blue bowl by the door. For 22 years, my parents had been absent from my life and present on my papers. On Monday morning, they planned to make the papers speak first, but I was going to be in the room this time. The hearing was set for 9. I arrived at 8:32 because I did not trust my hands to be calm if I had to hurry. The courthouse looked smaller than it had when I was 10. Most childhood places do. The doors were the same kind of heavy glass. The security tray still had the same gray plastic bite marks on the corners. Then I saw the hallway. For a second, my body went 10 years old before my mind could stop it. The wooden bench was still there, or close enough to be its twin. Same long seat. Same shine down the middle. Same kind of place where adults tell a child to wait, and then let the building swallow the rest of the day. I did not sit on it. I stood across from it, with my folder against my ribs. Inside that folder were the court notice, the petition, the printed voicemails, and my timeline. It felt thin. Too thin for 22 years. At 8:46, my parents walked in. Denise came first. She wore a cream jacket and carried a black purse with gold clasps. She looked like a woman who had dressed for a bank appointment, not a hearing about a daughter she had not raised. Martin walked beside her in a dark coat that pulled at the buttons. Their attorney followed with a leather bag and a stack of papers thick enough to make my folder look like a school assignment. My mother saw me. Her eyes moved over my face the way people check a receipt. No warmth, no surprise, just inspection. "Ava," she said. "Denise," I said. Martin's mouth tightened. He still did not like hearing her name without the word mom attached to it. That was almost funny, not enough to smile. Their attorney asked if I was represented. I said I was appearing for myself. He gave a small nod, the kind meant to look respectful and feel dismissive. Denise touched his sleeve. "She gets nervous in rooms like this," she said. There it was. The old trick in a new coat. Make me sound unstable before I opened my mouth. Shrink me in front of a stranger. Turn the room against me before the door even opened. I looked at the attorney. "I understand why I'm here." My voice came out level. I held on to that. At 8:59, the clerk called our matter. The hearing room was not large. A table for each side. A raised bench. A clock above the side door. The minute hand clicked like it had somewhere better to be. I sat alone on the left. My parents sat with their attorney on the right. He spread out their papers in a neat fan. Mine stayed in one folder. The clerk handed each side a thin agenda sheet. We were number 3. 2 cases went before us. In the first, a man asked to move a date. In the second, a woman signed one page and left crying into her sleeve. Ordinary pain moved through that room fast. Mine had waited 22 years for its turn. When our number came up, Martin stood too quickly. His chair legs made a sharp sound. Denise touched his wrist, and he sat back down. Even that looked rehearsed. Let the lawyer talk. Let the parents look tired. Let me look alone. The judge came in and read the case name. My name filled the room in a way it never had when I was a child. Ava Marie Calder. Settlement Trust Review. Petition for family payee status. Request for reimbursement of parental expenses. Parental expenses. I looked at my father when those words were read. Martin stared straight ahead. Their attorney stood first. He was smooth. He did not sound cruel. That made him useful to them. He said Denise and Martin Calder were the biological parents of record. He said their names appeared on my birth certificate. He said they had experienced hardship after my childhood injury. He said the law should recognize the family burden. Family burden. My mother folded her hands on the table. She made her face soft at the exact moment the attorney said it. I had seen that face before. She used to wear it in offices. Then he said the phrase they had paid him to dress up. My clients remain her parents on paper. Martin nodded once. Denise looked at me and lowered her voice, just enough for me to hear. Don't make another room harder than it has to be. There it was again. Not the same sentence from 22 years ago, but the same hand around my throat. If I spoke, I was trouble. If I objected, I was difficult. If I asked for my own money to stay mine, I was making a room harder. The judge asked me if I had any documents showing that my parents' rights had been fully terminated. I opened my folder. I had notices. I had their petition. I had my timeline. I had the saved messages. I had the voicemail where my mother said, "We are still your parents on paper." I had the text where Martin said I did not understand what they went through. I did not have the old sealed report. The room changed size. Not really, but it felt like the walls took one step closer. The judge looked through the papers I provided. "Miss Calder, These show recent contact and the pending dispute. They do not answer the older question. I nodded. That was fair. Fair can still hurt. My parents' attorney used the opening at once. He said there was no dispute about identity. He said the birth certificate was clear. He said if the court needed more time, his clients were willing to serve in a temporary capacity until the record could be clarified. Temporary capacity. That meant they could touch the money before the truth caught up. For 1 minute, I understood how they had planned it. They did not need the court to love them. They only needed the court to let them stand close enough to the check. They only needed the old file to be incomplete in the right place. My mother picked up her pen. She did not write. She held it ready. That was when I felt 10 years old again. Not because I was weak, because the room had put the same choice in front of me. Sit still, be manageable, let adults call absence a burden and blood a right. I kept both feet on the floor. The judge asked their attorney to explain the reimbursement request. He turned a page. $46,000 in parental strain, travel, administrative effort, and long-term disruption. Travel. I almost looked at the bench in the hallway through the wall. Denise kept her eyes on the judge. Martin adjusted his cuff. Neither of them looked like people asking for mercy. They looked like people waiting for a refund. The judge asked Denise if she had receipts. Denise said, "Not all of them. It has been many years." The attorney stepped in. "Many burdens in families are not kept in receipts, Your Honor." It was a good line, cold but good. That was why it worked for a moment. It made them look human. It made the missing proof sound like ordinary family life. It made my 22 years of empty chairs sound like a bookkeeping problem. The judge did not rule. Not yet. But she did allow their attorney to continue. She allowed him to lay out the request line by line. Medical travel, counseling disruption, missed wages, household strain, administrative costs. The words stacked up. None of them had my 10-year-old body in them. None of them had the bench. None of them had the paper cup crushed in my hand. They were clean words. That made them dangerous. My folder sat closed under my palm. For the first time that morning, I was not sure it would be enough. Denise felt it. I saw the small change in her shoulders. They settled lower. Martin leaned back half an inch. Their attorney slid a form toward them and tapped a place near the bottom, not for a signature yet, but as a promise of where the morning was going. My mother looked at me again. This time, she almost smiled. Not wide, not foolish. Just a tiny lift at one corner, the kind a person gives when the room starts doing what she came for. The clerk opened the side door. A woman stepped in with silver hair, a navy coat, and a sealed folder held flat against her chest. I knew her before I knew why. Elaine Ross. My old court-appointed guardian paused just inside the room. Her eyes found me. She did not smile. She gave the smallest nod, the kind that says I see you, but not yet. Then she turned to the judge. Your Honor, she said. I am Elaine Ross, guardian of record from the original hearing. I have the sealed report. Elaine did not hurry. That was the first thing I noticed. She did not rush toward me. She did not glare at my parents. She did not perform the kind of outrage that lets a room relax because someone else is carrying the feeling for them. She walked to the clerk's desk and placed the sealed folder down with both hands. The judge looked at her name on the notice sheet. Miss Ross, you were the guardian of record in the original proceeding? Yes, Your Honor. My parents' attorney stood. Your Honor, we were not informed that a prior guardian would be offering testimony today. Elaine did not look at him. I am not here to offer an opinion, she said. I am here because the court asked for the original record. The judge nodded once. Then we will begin with the record. My mother's hand moved to her purse. Not into it. Just onto the clasp. The same purse had sat beside her all morning like she might leave the second the money became real. Martin stared at Elaine, as if he were trying to place her face without accepting why it mattered. I sat still. Every old part of me wanted to explain. I wanted to say the bench was real. I wanted to say the cup was real. I wanted to say I had waited until the hallway lights changed color. But I had learned something in records work. If the right document is in the room, do not talk over it. Let it be louder than you. The judge turned to Denise first. Mrs. Calder, after the guardianship hearing 22 years ago, did you continue caring for Ava? Denise blinked. It was complicated. The answer floated there. No one grabbed it. The judge turned to my father. Mr. Calder, who took Ava home from this courthouse that day? Martin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That silence did more than any speech I could have given. It put the bench back in the room. Elaine opened the folder. The seal made a small tearing sound. My mother flinched. Not much. Just enough that I saw her shoulder jump under the cream jacket. Elaine did not start with a rule. She did not start with a label. She took out one page with a black and white photograph clipped to it. Then she placed the photograph on the table. A little girl sat on a wooden bench outside a courtroom. Her coat was folded in her lap. One paper cup lay crushed beside her shoe. Her hair was too tight at the scalp because her mother had combed it that way. I knew the girl. I had been the girl. The room saw her before anyone explained her. Denise pulled her hand off the purse clasp. Martin swallowed so hard the sound reached my side of the table. Their attorney set his pen down. For the first time that morning, no one was looking at my birth certificate. Elaine touched the corner of the photograph. This was taken by court staff at 12:18 p.m. after the original hearing. My mother whispered, "That is not necessary." The judge looked at her. "It is the record." That was all. 4 words. They took the air out of Denise's face. Elaine turned to the report. "Page 7, she said. I did not breathe until she began reading. Ava Calder was left unattended outside the guardianship courtroom after both biological parents exited the building. Neither parent returned to retrieve the child. Guardian of record remained with the child until placement staff arrived. No one moved. The sentence was plain. It did not call them cruel. It did not call me trouble. It did not need to. It only said what happened, and that was the part my parents had never been able to control. I looked at Martin. He was staring at the photograph. His eyes were fixed on the crushed cup, not on my face. Maybe that was easier. A paper cup does not ask why. Denise tried to speak. "We are still—" She stopped. The rest of her sentence waited for the old word. On paper. It did not come. Her mouth stayed open for half a second, then closed like she had bitten down on it. The cream jacket suddenly looked too bright for her skin. The judge asked Elaine to confirm the report's source. Elaine answered in the same steady voice. "I wrote it that day in my role as guardian of record." The photograph was attached by court staff. The original has remained in the sealed guardianship file. Their attorney stood again, slower this time. "Your Honor, my clients do not dispute that the day was difficult. But a difficult day does not erase biological relationship." The judge looked at the photo. Then she looked at the birth certificate on his table. "No," she said. "But biological relationship does not create control over this settlement." My father turned toward his attorney. The attorney did not look back fast enough. That was when Martin understood the part that mattered to him. The old paper had not saved him. The older record had met it at the door. The judge continued. "The request for family payee status is denied." The clerk stamped one page. The sound cracked through the room. Denise's fingers curled around the edge of the table. Her nails scraped the wood. Martin's chin dipped once, as if someone had pressed a hand between his shoulders. The attorney slid the birth certificate back into his folder without looking at it. That was the moment the room changed sides. My own folder was still closed under my palm. For once, I did not need to make myself believed by force. Someone had written the truth down before I knew how to ask for it. A birth certificate had been their shield. A photograph had become mine. One paper said who made me. The other showed who left me. The judge slid the reimbursement petition to the side. The request for parental reimbursement will be marked for immediate review in light of the prior record. Their attorney reached for the packet he had spread out so neatly. He gathered the pages with both hands now. No fan, no display, just a stack being pulled back before it could do more damage to his clients. The clerk moved the reimbursement papers into a separate folder. A red tab went on top. That was the visible part. Not punishment in a speech. Not revenge. Just their own request moved into a place they could not charm their way out of. My mother looked at me then. Really looked. Not like a receipt. Not like a problem. Like a woman realizing the child she left in a hallway had grown tall enough to sit across from her and watch the truth arrive with a seal on it. I did not smile. Elaine turned slightly and pushed a paper cup of water toward me. I had not seen when she picked it up. Maybe from the clerk's table. Maybe from the hallway. It did not matter. The cup stopped near my folder. For 1 second, I was 10 again. Then I was 32. Elaine's voice softened, but only by a little. You were never the trouble in that room. Denise made a small sound. Not an apology. Not even close. More like a person hearing a door lock from the wrong side. Martin looked down at the birth certificate. His thumb covered my name. Then he moved it. The judge gave the final instruction. The settlement would remain under the court's direct release process to me. No parent would receive it. No temporary control would be granted. Any future contact about the funds would go through proper channels. I understood every word. I also understood the room without the words. The papers they carried in as weapons were now stacked against them. The phrase they had polished for the judge had broken in my mother's mouth. The photograph of a child on a bench had done what my memory could not do alone. It made the room see. Within 10 minutes, my parents lost the only version of parenthood they had come back to claim. Not love, not history, control. And when the clerk closed the folder with the red tab on top, the sound was small, but my mother heard it like a door. The first thing they lost was not the money. It was the story. For 22 years, my parents had carried a version of that day that made them sound tired instead of cruel. In their version, I was difficult. In their version, they had no support. In their version, walking out of a courthouse without their 10-year-old daughter was not abandonment. It was a hard choice made by two overwhelmed adults. Page 7 took that story away. The week after the hearing, I received a copy of the judge's order. It was only 6 pages. No dramatic language, no thunder. The court denied my parents' request to receive my settlement. The court denied temporary control. The court also marked their reimbursement claim for immediate review because it did not match the old guardianship record. The order said my parents could not contact the clerk for updates about my release schedule. They had tried that once. The clerk wrote it down. That detail gave me more relief than the dollar amount. For the first time, a public office did not treat their voices as louder than mine. Their $46,000 claim had not just failed. It had become a question with their names attached to it. I did not celebrate. I made coffee. I read the order twice. Then I put it in a folder labeled Final, because I wanted one thing in my life with that word on it. The money came to me through the court's release process. Not all at once in a movie kind of way. There were forms, meetings, signatures, and a woman behind a counter who told me where to initial. It was ordinary. That helped. Ordinary can be a mercy after a life shaped by other people's emergencies. My parents' life became ordinary too, but not in the way they planned. The first call came from a woman at a dealership. She had my number because Martin had listed me as the settlement recipient who would confirm available family funds. Her voice was polite, but tired. "Miss Calder," she said, "we are trying to verify whether you authorized your parents to use expected funds as support for a vehicle deposit." I looked at the strip of morning sun on my kitchen floor. "No," I said. "I did not." That was all I had to say. The SUV disappeared from their driveway before the end of the month. A neighbor I barely remembered sent me a message about it. She did not mean to gossip. She wrote, "I thought you should know they were telling people it was already paid for." It had not been paid for. It had been promised against money they never received. Then came the mobile home. Denise had told a cousin that she and Martin were finally moving somewhere peaceful. That cousin called me by mistake, thinking I was part of the plan. I let her talk for 30 seconds before she realized I was quiet. "They said you were helping," she said. "No," I said. There was a pause. Then she said, "Oh." That one small word did more damage than a speech. It meant the story had started leaking outside the courtroom. It meant the family was hearing that I was not the ungrateful daughter blocking 2 aging parents. I was the woman they had tried to use as collateral. The mobile home stayed on the lot with a paper sign in the window. Their attorney withdrew from the reimbursement matter 2 weeks later. I did not hear it from him. I saw it in a short notice from the court. One clean line. Counsel of record withdrawn. No explanation. Lawyers know when a folder has turned into a fire. The bank letter came last. It was forwarded to an old address, then returned, then copied to the clerk because it referenced my settlement by name. The clerk sent it back with a note that no parent had authority over my funds. That was how their plan ended. Not with screaming. With returned mail. Denise called me 12 days after the hearing. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice sounded smaller than it had in court. "Ava," she said. I was scared back then. She paused like that was supposed to open a door. Then she added, "You do not know what it was like for us." I listened to the whole message. I did not delete it. I did not answer it either. Martin texted the next morning. "We did what we thought we had to do." There it was again. The same old room. The same old trick. They could describe leaving a child as survival, but they still could not describe the child as someone who had been harmed. I sent one letter through an attorney. It was short. All future contact had to go through legal channels. They were not to request money from me. They were not to come to my home. They were not to use the word daughter in any document asking for access to funds. I did not call them names. The record had done enough. After the settlement cleared, people expected me to do something big. Buy a house. Quit my job. Send a photograph from somewhere with blue water and a chair no one had cried in. I did none of that. I moved into a quieter apartment, 10 minutes from the clinic. The kitchen had a window over the sink. The table still had 2 chairs, but both of them matched. I bought a small blue bowl for my keys and put it by the door. No one else had a copy. In the new apartment, I bought groceries without calculating what I had to give up to deserve them. Milk, eggs, coffee, a small bag of oranges. The first week, I caught myself saving the receipt like someone might demand proof that I had permission to eat well. Then I put the receipt in the trash. That mattered more than square footage. A few weeks later, I went back to the courthouse. Not for a hearing. For a meeting with facilities. Of all things. The old bench had been removed during a hallway update. Elaine had asked where it went. And somehow, in the strange way kind people make small miracles out of boring systems, one short piece of the wood had been saved. She met me near the clerk's window. Her hair was pinned back. Her navy coat was the same style, or maybe my memory wanted it to be. She held the strip of wood in both hands. It was smooth in the middle and rough at one end where it had been cut. "I thought you might want this," she said. I took it carefully. We did not need to turn the hallway into a ceremony. The wood was enough. A child had waited on that bench because no one came back. A woman was standing there now because someone had written down the truth. Elaine touched the edge of the wood once. "I kept the report because children grow up," she said, "and grown children deserve records that remember correctly." That was the warmest thing anyone had ever said to me in a courthouse. I used part of the settlement to start a small fund for teenagers leaving guardianship without family support. I did not name it after myself. I did not name it after the Calders. I called it the Bench Fund. The first checks were small. Bus passes. Document folders. Lock boxes for birth certificates and social security cards. A pair of work shoes for a girl who had aged out of placement and needed to start a job on Monday. Not heroic things, useful things. Some kids do not need a speech. They need a place to keep their papers where no one can take them. Ruthie from the diner was the first person I told about the fund. She did not clap. She refilled my coffee and said, "Good. Kids need somewhere to keep their papers." That was why I liked her. She knew when a sentence was enough. I kept the strip of benchwood on my windowsill. Sometimes the morning light hits it while I make coffee. It does not look sad there. It looks finished. Sometimes a boundary is not a wall against love. It is a door that finally locks against harm. Denise left 2 more voicemails that year. Martin left none. In one message, she said she hoped I would not let money change me. I almost laughed then. Money did not change me. It changed the room. It made the people who had left me come back, and it showed me exactly what they believed family was for. Real family is not the person who appears when your name is attached to a check. Real family is the person who remembers where you sat when you had nothing to give. It is the woman who brings water. The server who tells you to sit down before reading bad news. The clerk who says your name correctly. The quiet hands that do not reach for your money. That is family. Presence. That's my story. 22 years. 1 wooden bench. Page 7. $780,000. 1 paper cup. 1 old report. And 2 parents who learned that being on paper is not the same as being there. If someone in your life only calls you family when they need access to something you survived, please hear me. You do not have to become easier to love for people who chose not to show up. You are allowed to keep your name, your door, your records, and your peace. Share this story with someone who needs that reminder. Comment if someone ever used the word family only when they wanted something from you. And subscribe for more calm family stories about truth, dignity, and boundaries. My name is Ava Calder. I am 32 years old. And I am not trouble anymore.